May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. So I want to talk about the symbols of this day, of Ash Wednesday, and in some respects the symbols of all of Lent. The first symbol is our ashes. Ashes are a symbol of grief and of a broken heart in the ancient world. When you were grieving, there were certain things that you did, sort of social indicators, to let everyone around you know that you were grieving. This is kind of what Jesus was responding to, but it was a beautiful tradition when it was done well. You would tear your clothing. You would cover your head with ashes. And you would do these things so that everybody knew that you were grieving. You weren't bathing anymore. The ashes showed everyone, I'm not bathing anymore because I am grieving. And clothing, the same thing. I'm not worried about my appearance, about how I'm presented to you, because my heart has been broken. And the Bible is filled with these images. I put in your bulletins, there's a bunch of passages, and that's what ties them all together, is there are different moments in the Old and New Testaments when people are grieving. When David found out that his son killed two of his brothers, he tore his clothes. Jonah, when he was arrived in Nineveh, when God told him to convert the capital of Assyria, which was an impossible task, to show the Lord's grief, he covered his head with ashes and put on a burlap sack instead of regular clothing to show the grief of the Lord. And perhaps the most profound image of grief in the Bible is when God himself is grieving. And the temple, the curtain of the temple in the Gospel of Matthew is torn in two the moment Jesus dies from crucifixion, to show God's grief, God tearing his clothing out of devastation. There is something powerful about grieving in this manner. There's something powerful about living in a culture we no longer live in, where grief was taken so seriously that we felt that we needed to instantly show the world, I'm not thinking about how I look. I'm not thinking about all the cultural indicators that we share. I'm not worried about showing my station. I'm not worried about bathing. I'm not worried about watching what I eat. I'm not worried about any of those things today or this week or perhaps this month, because I need to focus all of my energy and attention on God, on my relationship with God, my relationship with the holy, and nothing in this world, and none of your opinions are as important to me right now as my relationship with God. That's what this symbol meant. And there's something very powerful about our society, both in the real world and online. Think about what we do in our culture. We get off the grid whenever we're devastated. We for some reason live in a culture where you have to always put on your best face. And if we're truly devastated, we sort of drop off the radar for a while. We don't want to upset anyone. And when we've kind of gotten ourselves together in private, we reveal ourselves once again with a big smile on our faces, and off we go. This is a society where they would say, I don't want to isolate myself when I'm grieving because I need those people that I love to hold me up in prayer. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to all the same places I normally go to. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go to temple. I'm going to go wherever I'm going to go, but I'm going to be covered in ashes, and I'm going to be wearing a burlap sack. They all know I'm a mess. And they're just going to have to deal with it. I might start crying at any moment. That's okay, because I have no makeup on because I'm covered in ashes. There's a powerful symbol. And to be honest, the online culture rather than challenging this, it mirrors it. We have Facebook pages now and Twitter feeds and all these things where we might type words of sorrow or words of devastation, but there's our picture, carefully selected by us, with our big smile on our face at some wonderful moment. We're there and the beaches of Jamaica, smiling away, even though in real life we are devastated. It's a kind of theater that we create. And the ancient world wanted nothing of that theater. We react to this often. We see that we actually react to it as if it's theater. There's so many stories that we have of putting ashes on our foreheads and the theater that ensues. Right, when we say, I remember I showed up and my non-church going friends saw the ashes on my forehead and I forgot that they were there and everyone laughed at me. Or everybody has these, we go to McDonald's after this or something and everyone notices the ashes, we forget they're there. And, we all have those stories as Anglicans. The intention of this symbol is the diametric opposite of showing everybody that we're Christian. It's saying, I can't be bothered right now with any of these social conventions because Lent has just started. And I need to focus all of my attentions on God, on the holy, God's presence in my life. And these ashes symbolize the fact that I couldn't care less what you think I look like right now, because I'm just thinking about God. It's a symbol of our total disregard for other people's opinions. And this is why there actually is a harmony between this symbol and the gospel. It always seems on its surface like there's a total disconnect between what Jesus is saying about go into a room and close the door because you need to focus on God, and then us proudly going about our day with the ashes on our forehead. They're both in harmony because Jesus was seeing people getting so carried away with the drama of this that they were forgetting the reason for this, which was God. There's a harmony there. The second symbol that we use for Lent is giving up things. It's part of the same tradition. When one is grieving, we're not really focusing on what we're eating. We're not focusing on, of course, this is a society where eating is very ritualized. It's not something like, I'm not worrying about what I eat because I'm watching my weight for Lent or something. No, it's a culture where normally you'd be very fixated on what you were eating. If someone invited you to a meal that was an incredibly big deal and you had to go, this is a culture of hospitality. Ours is still a culture of hospitality. But in Lent, we're saying, no, I can't be fixated on all these cultural traditions because I'm focused on God, on the holy. So one of the aspects of our giving things up for Lent is disrupting these normal patterns. The other aspect is a lot of the things we give up tend to break our hearts if they're the right things. What I was once told about what we should give up for Lent is find something that you don't have a complicated relationship with. Something that you just simply love. It's just something lovely. If you're a smoker, don't give up smoking for Lent, because you don't really love smoking. If you struggle with food or diet, don't do something like give up chocolate for Lent, because you have a complicated relationship. Pick something that you have a simple relationship with. That's something that you love. For me, it's podcasts. I don't even know if everyone knows, especially when I was in Quebec, and I would have all those little voices of Jian Gomeshi from Q on CBC, or my NPR people that followed me from America into Quebec, and they would be there in my ear as I was going about my business. And there was something heartbreaking about losing all my little podcast friends for 40 days. And in place of them, I was in silence. I'd be driving in my car, and I'd be alone. There was something important for me about that. There's something about us creating a moment where we're brokenhearted for God to enter in. God enter into our brokenness. So I encourage you, if you're going to give up something for Lent, find something you love, you have an uncomplicated relationship with, and break your hearts a little. Give it up. And in place of your brokenheartedness, don't replace it with something else. If you're giving up chocolate for Lent, don't just replace it with caramel or something. In the place of your brokenheartedness, maybe find a way to allow the holy to enter in instead. In place of chocolate, a simple meal. In place of podcasts or some kind of music, silence. In the place of something we love, God. This is a symbolic grieving that we're all doing together for Lent, Ash Wednesday, where we're disregarding all those cultural idioms, all those distractions that we have constructed as a society and as individuals to allow the holy to enter into our lives. Lent is not supposed to be a time where we feel awful about ourselves. It's like a quiet retreat away in a cabin. Something we love as well, but isn't nearly as busy or fussy or as self-conscious as our regular world is. We're giving things up in search of the holy, not in search of guilt. So I encourage you to seek out the holy this Lent. Perhaps break your hearts a little. Perhaps focus less on physical things and focus on holy things. Amen.